Having a small shop can be kind of a pain in the rump. But instead of dreaming and waiting on that bigger shop that, let's be honest, probably ain't coming, what are some of the things that you can do or not do to make the most out of the space you have? Well, I'm glad you asked, because that's exactly what I'm going to help you with today by telling you 5 things that you don't want to do when laying out your small shop, if you want to make the most of the square footage in your space. Hi, I'm Daniel, and I like to make things out of wood. I also like to make videos for beginner to intermediate woodworkers. The videos are generally focused on tips, tools, and builds, and I do it all for my less than 200 square foot shop. If that sounds good to you, go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you can see more. All right, let's get into the video. Now, you may have heard some say that the first step in laying out a small shop is to get on the computer and start 3D modeling or converting your shop and tools to 1x1 centimeter shapes and cutting them out on graph paper. Don't do that. That's don't number 1. Don't do that. As hobbyist woodworkers, between our jobs, kids' practices and games, times with significant other, and whatever else life throws at you, we only have a limited amount of time to devote to our passion. Do you really want to spend that time learning to code or cutting out shapes like some sort of arts and crafts project? I believe those things are what I like to call a WOT, waste of time. And here's why. That level of pre-planning makes sense with a large shop where workflow and efficiency can be greatly affected by shop layout. But the beauty of a small shop is that it has built-in efficiency. Everything is already close to everything else. So instead of burning watt hours planning for workflow, just make sure the tools can get in where they fit in and adjust from there. And the best way to make those adjustments is with these wheels. With your tools on wheels, I promise you, you can rearrange the entire shop in less time than it would take you to cut out miniature tools with an X-Acto knife. Plus, with a small shop, at least with some of the tools, you'll need to move them a little bit each time you use them anyway. So having wheels on them will be a necessity. And another thing I promise you is that your shop will not remain static. It's going to be an amoeba of sorts. As you work in it and progress as a woodworker, what you ask of your shop and your tools will change. New tools will come, and sometimes tools will go. Plus, I find it therapeutic to just be in the shop anyway, even if it's just to move tools around. So just get in the shop. All them watt hours spent in front of graph paper or a computer screen, they're just not necessary. Now, another thing you may have heard in various corners of the internet is that
you don't need a miter saw.
Miter stations take up too much space.
Miter saws are for suckers.
There are a number of people that say some version of each of those things. And those people are what I like to call wrong, in most cases. I suppose if you work primarily with hand tools or mostly on really small items, a miter saw wouldn't be of much use to you. But for the majority of woodworkers, especially the hobbyists, a miter saw is an invaluable tool, which is why don't number 2 is do not fear the miter station. And I'll tell you why. One of the arguments against the miter station is that it takes up too much space in a small shop. And of course, I disagree. My shop is less than 200 square feet and I have a miter station. And this is it. As a side note, if you want to know why I chose this miter station rather than building one, you can check out my shop tour video here. Okay, back to the miter station. Now, my miter station does take up a decent amount of room in my shop, as it measures approximately 8 feet long by 3 feet tall by 2 feet deep. But of that space, this much of it is dedicated to storage, which is something everybody needs in their shop, big or small. And the middle section here is where I put my offcuts and trash. Again, something that all shops need somewhere in the shop. And you don't have to put a trash can here. You can use that space for whatever you want. You know, something like an air compressor, sustainer storage, really anything. Mini fridge, pot of gold, whatever you want. Another benefit of having a miter station is that you get a secondary flat surface in the shop. It's great for giving some tools a permanent home like a drill press, sander, or grinder. It also provides a temporary resting place for tools in use when you need a clear workbench in the middle of a project. So the miter station is not just a waste of space. It has plenty of benefits for shops of all sizes. But as for the tool itself, the detractors of the miter saw will say there's nothing you can do with a miter saw that you can't do with some other tool. And while that is true, you can also say the same thing about most tools in the shop, because there's always more than one way to do things in woodworking. But the miter saw is a speed and efficiency tool. It especially excels at repetitive crosscuts, particularly on larger stock. Have you ever made a crosscut on an 8-foot board using a job site table saw? I mean, it's cumbersome at best and downright dangerous at worst. In fact, if I ranked the tools in my shop for speed and efficiency, the miter saw would be right up there at the top, probably along with my domino. And if I had to choose to have only one of the two tools in my shop, I mean, I'd probably choose the domino. I mean, let's be honest, I choose the domino. But I did have to think about it. Okay, so we've established that we don't need to do computer programming or arts and crafts before laying out our shop. We've also established that we don't need to shy away from the miter saw or miter station. Don't number 3 is a bit more subtle, and that is when laying out your shop, don't forget about the third dimension. Not to be confused with the fourth dimension. Did you hear that? Basically, what I mean by this is when you're evaluating where you're going to put a tool, don't just think about the square footage it's going to take up, but consider the cubic footage as well. And in my shop, I have an example of both good use of cubic footage and bad use of cubic footage, or the third dimension. Sitting right next to each other, I have two tools, my planer and drum sander. Each tool takes up a similar amount of square footage in the shop, but one does a much better job of efficiently using the cubic footage. The planer sits on a stand that I made, which allows it to be mobile. It's tall enough to be comfortable to use, but not so tall that it's top heavy. And it provides a good amount of extra storage in the shop. The drum sander, on the other hand, just sits on the stand that it came with. It has a tray at the bottom, but there's a good amount of wasted space that I could use if I just made or bought something with more storage for it to sit on. And it doesn't have to be extravagant. My planer stand is made completely out of scrap plywood with dado groove runners and holes in the faces for drawer pulls. So take a look around your shop and see if you have some wasted space like this that could be better used if you added some storage. Or an alternative option to this is one of those flip-top tool stands that you can either make or buy it. But that'll allow you to fit two tools in one footprint. Some of the most underrated and overlooked improvements in your shop, which also happen to be some of the lowest hanging fruit, is lighting. Do not overlook lighting. The funny thing is that it seems to be the smaller shops that tend to overlook it more. I don't know if it's because we say, my shop isn't but yay big, I don't need a bunch of light. But whatever it is, I was the same way. I just used to use the lights that I had with the garage door opener. I thought, well, I can see, so it's fine. If that sounds like you, I promise you, if you upgrade your lighting, you will never go back. And you'll wonder how you were ever able to get any projects done with the lighting you had before. This is the lighting I had before. And this is my lighting now. And it's not something where you need to be a certified licensed electrician to do it. I just got some of the LED lights that you can daisy chain together and plug into an outlet. I'll leave links to the lights I bought below, as well as some of the other items I talk about. And to make it even more convenient, you can plug them into a remote switch so that you can turn them off and on from wherever you want. And my shop is the epitome of function over form, meaning that I don't really care much how it looks as long as it gets the job done. So I couldn't really be bothered with coming up with an elegant solution for wire management. So I just used packing tape to tape them to the ceiling. And I only say that and show you that to emphasize just how easy it is to use these lights to greatly upgrade your shop lighting. Now, right up there with upgrading my lights, this next don't is one I wish I did sooner. Or is it wish I didn't do? I wish I did do the don't, or wish I didn't do the don't. I don't know, whatever. And that is, don't ignore dust collection and air filtration. If you're a beginner and or someone with a small shop, the idea of hardlining and piping and ducting, running it to each tool, installing blast gates, it can sound really intimidating and expensive and like a lot of work. But behold, for I bring tidings of great joy. For we are in a small shop. And like I said, in a small shop, everything is close to everything. Your best bet is going to be to get a dust collector, stick it in the corner, and use a flexible hose and adapters to attach to each tool. There are a few different options that you can use for adapters. I went with the Rockler quick change adapters, but I didn't get the Rockler hose because it was more expensive than just the generic one that I got off of Amazon. And as for the dust collector itself, you don't need anything super powerful. Mine is a 1.5 horsepower and it runs off standard 110 electricity. And I have some decently sized tools that I use it with, and it works great. But dust collecting is only one half of the equation, the other half being air filtration. And air filtration wasn't something I was really concerned with when I first started woodworking, because I've always been pretty good about wearing my respirator. But I was wrong, because not only was there a noticeable difference in the air quality of my shop while I was working with the air filtration unit, but the amount of dust that would settle on everything in the shop overnight when I came back into the shop the next day, it was dramatically reduced. And again, it doesn't have to be super powerful or expensive for a small shop. As a matter of fact, I think I have the cheapest one in the market, and it's worked great for my shop. It actually probably worked for a shop twice my size, to be honest. So for both health reasons and shop cleanliness reasons, it's a relatively low investment for a huge payoff. All right, hopefully that was helpful. And if I missed any don'ts that you think I should have included, let me know in the comments. All right, now take it easy.